The car could have backed up and nudged him and caused him to fall. I mean, any event that would cause him to fall backwards obviously would result in him striking his head. So there's numerous, almost infinite possibility of enough. The car could have backed up and nudged him and caused him to fall. I mean, any event that would cause him to fall backwards obviously would result in him striking his head. So there's numerous, almost infinite possibility of enough.
catlovedreamingpeach.com.
Hello, my lovely peaches. How are you? Welcome and welcome back. So I'm just going to acknowledge here that yes, I jump cut out the part where he says the car could have backed up without seeing him. The whole without seeing him part is him deciding the verdict, because the car doesn't see, the driver sees. So for him to say without seeing him means he's already decided she didn't see him. He's like literally telling the jury right there, without seeing him, the car could have nudged him. So if you remove that part, which Lolly should have objected to, what he actually says is the car could have backed up and nudged him, causing him to fall on the frozen ground, which could have been as hard as concrete, and nobody tested it, not even him. And that's what this video is about. Do I still have reasonable doubt? I do. Could these things be cleared up in trial number 2 if Lolly has a do-over and he makes things a lot more clear? Maybe. Do I personally believe that Karen Reed tried to kill John O'Keefe, that she did it on purpose? I don't know. I don't know about that. But I do believe she hit him. And I believe that this video is proof that even the defense's expert witness also acknowledges that it could have happened. And here is the video. If you're interested in hearing it, watch. And if you're going to comment in the video, that means reasonable doubt. Duh, that's what I've been saying. Okay, enjoy the video. But before I get to it, I do want to just add, I am fully aware that this specific witness also says a whole bunch of stuff about how it couldn't have happened and he didn't bother to conduct any frozen ground testing and he didn't need to do testing and all the things that he said, which I do not include in this specific video. This video was not to show the entirety of Dr. Rentschler's testimony. It was just to highlight this specific part. I may or may not do a reaction video to the entire Crash Daddy and Dr. Rentschler. Crash Daddy's actually Dr. Daniel Wolfe. I might do that. It's like 2 hours worth. So I don't know. Do you have any interest in me doing a reaction to the full testimony of these 2 ARCA witnesses? I really just wanted to talk about this little snippet. Let me know if you'd like to know more about what they said. But this was the whole point. The bottom line is, there was a possibility, and that's what I'm pointing out. So I really just want to point out a few things that feel more clear to me now that I've listened to this testimony again and basically completed this video. So not only do I feel that Dr. Rentschler is coming to a legal conclusion, which is basically like a big part of what this verdict with the jury were supposed to be deciding. Did she hit him? Could she have hit him? Did she know that he was there? Did she hit him and know she hit him? Did she hit him and she didn't know she hit him? How could you know? That's the thing. They could never prove if she knew she hit him unless they had real evidence of that. And they were having a pretty hard time proving that she even hit him, or could she have even hit him? And Dr. Wolfe and Dr. Rentschler are these 2 big, huge witnesses that pretty much everybody who seems to be on the 100% she's innocent, could never have done it camp are apparently in the belief that these two witnesses said it's not physically possible for her to have hit him, period. And not only does this video show that that is not actually true, that's not actually what they said definitively beyond any reasonable doubt for a fact 100%. That is not accurate. That's not what they said, nor could they have said that. But I actually found Dr. Rentschler's testimony to be very biased on Karen Reed's defense side, which is not surprising because even though he said, no, I wasn't hired by the defense, no, I wasn't paid for by the defense, some of his statements seemed completely biased, and again, as if he'd already come to his verdict. And a couple of those things that I really want to point out are the fact that he said the car could have nudged him. The car could have backed up and not seen him and nudged him, knocking him over. There are so many layers in there of distancing and bias, and like I said, legal conclusion. The car could have nudged him, not Karen Reed, the car. So by him saying the car could have, and then the other thing, nudged, what a sweet, gentle little word. Don't we nudge people we love? We give them a little nudge. The fact that he said the word nudge, again, is an extremely biased conclusion. He didn't, it's like, it was like a love tap. Well, did she nudge him? So the car could have nudged him, knocking him down where he hit his head on the ground. So in other words, Karen could have hit him with her vehicle, which caused his death. Or in other words, Karen could have hit John with her SUV, killing him. Karen could have done it. John could have gotten hit by an SUV, which is the cause of his death. There, it's right there. The fact that he distanced and nudged, he floured it, he made it soft, he removed Karen and replaced Karen with the car. The car could have nudged him. Karen was the one driving, not the car. Karen could have nudged or hit him. Karen could have hit him with her SUV, which knocking him down so he hit the ground. Karen could have killed John with her SUV. Full stop. According to who? The defense witness, Dr. Rentschler. Am I taking his words and twisting them? Or is he taking his words and twisting them? Is he using his words to distance Karen from the act? Is he using his words to distance the fact that it was an actual crash? Meaning John was hit by an SUV, not the car could have nudged him? That's what this video is about, and these are my thoughts on this. Hello, my lovely peaches. How are you? It is the 4th of July. I don't celebrate the 4th of July, even though I'm an American. Shuffle over here. The lighting is pink and purple because it's late. And let me see. So, guys, this is a quick video. I spent a couple of hours screen recording Crash Daddy, whose real name is Dr. Daniel Wolfe, Wolfe, and Dr. Andrew Rentschler, who is the engineer accident reconstructionist, and the two of them worked together so they were hired by an unnamed entity, which has been alluded to that it was the FBI who is investigating this case as well, although the why, the how, the what, we don't know for sure, although many people suspect it's because of Trooper Proctor, who was also, from what I read, it sounds like he's got some paid time off. So it's like, okay, you bad boy, you get to go take a paid vacation, and we're going to think about what we're going to do. But the point of this particular video is that I have been hearing countless comments and people who are so dead set on their belief that the science says there's absolutely no way that John could have been hit by a car, and they feel like it's 100% not guilty because there's no way that John could have been hit by the car, said by the experts. And I know scientists that are good, they will first of all never say 100%, like there's, this is like 100, 1,000, 1 billion%. Things are, at best 99.99, and that's still taking a whole lot of credit for something that you're theorizing. So yes, you can be an amazing scientist who has amazing skills and an unbelievably, incredibly depth and breadth of education. But the fact of the matter is, this is a situation where they were not there. They don't have a video showing them what happened. And the evidence is extremely, extremely, extremely thin, as well as potentially questionable. But what I really, really wanted to do in this particular video was just to pull out a few clips of Andrew Rentschler's testimony, Dr. Rentschler, where he was being questioned by Prosecutor Lally, and Prosecutor Lally, and it's really funny because Lally tried to cut him off, and the judge said, no, let him answer. And it was that extra part that he answered that I captured, which is my showing. Although the defense said the chances of it having been an actual vehicle collision are almost nil, they're not completely nil. They're not zero. First of all, they don't know whether or not the ground was frozen. He specifically mentions that, and Lally questions him about, couldn't the ground have been frozen, and the ground could have been hard enough to have been like concrete? And Dr. Rentschler goes into a nice long explanation about how you have to do all this testing, and it should have been done even for like a few weeks before, about the freeze and the thaw and the freeze rate and all this stuff, and how it's so complex, and you cannot just assume that the ground was frozen. Correct. Did you do that testing, Dr. Rentschler? No, I did not. And so what Lally did not say, which he should have said, is, so therefore you can also not assume that the ground was not frozen. Correct? Correct. But no, instead of Lally asking that and making it clear, so you are saying that the ground might have been frozen, and we'll never know because nobody actually tested it. Maybe they could still go back and test it if there are records somehow from the weather thingy-majingy about how hot and cold and literally, but if nobody ever actually tested it, I don't know. Can they go back and find that data? I don't know, maybe. But the fact is, just like the ground might not have been frozen, it might have. They didn't test it. Then the next clip is also Dr. Rentschler, and he's talking about, so Lally says to him, could the wound on the back of his head have been caused by him hitting the ground? And Dr. Rentschler says, yes, he could have slipped and hit his head, or he could have been bumped by the SUV and that could have made him fall. So hello, people, he literally said he might have. He said the car could have backed up and not known he was there and nudged him and caused him to slip and he could have busted his head. But as much as this witness claimed not to be paid by the defense, and also Crash Daddy claims not to be paid by the defense, as I watched it again and again, it actually did seem to me that they were quite biased, and he added a bunch of stuff. So I screen recorded about 2 hours worth, if not 2.5 hours worth of their testimony. And I was thinking about doing a reaction to it and talking about it at length. But the fact is that all I really wanted to pull out of it was this exact part where, unlike what all the people who are saying the scientists said it was impossible, therefore it was impossible, I wanted to show actually the scientists said, although they said a whole bunch of unlikely and very unlikely and, there wasn't enough evidence to show this, they also talked about there was a bunch of evidence that they didn't even have. And while they claim it made absolutely no difference, how do you know if something would have made a difference or not if you didn't have that information? And I also noticed a few body language moments that I felt like Dr. Rentschler is maybe a little bit arrogant. And maybe he's quite proud of his strong opinion, and he doesn't want to let a few things like, oh, you didn't do the testing, and you actually didn't have all the information, and you did acknowledge that there is an actual possibility. He said it with his own words. It's possible that the SUV could have nudged him. He threw in there the caveat, didn't know he was there. That's him literally deciding the case. By him saying, oh, well, the SUV could have nudged him, didn't see him, he literally decided on the stand through his testimony that she couldn't have seen him. Why could it only have nudged him without her knowing he was there? It could have nudged him with her knowing he was there just as much. Her knowing she nudged him or not knowing doesn't change the fact that the man literally said the ground could have been hard enough to be like as hard as concrete. We don't know. We didn't test it either way. You cannot assume it was frozen, but you can't assume it wasn't frozen. And he literally said the Lexus could have nudged him. I took out the part where he said all the reasons why he caveat, and maybe I will, save that part and do a little bit of a reaction to it and share that another time. If you want to see it yourself, go ahead and see it. I'm telling you, I jump cut out the part where he said, did you do the testing? And his answer was, well, no. Then he said, but, and he went on a whole long tirade about, well, didn't matter, and this and that, and it wouldn't have mattered anyway. And how can you say it wouldn't have mattered? You literally said that if the ground had been hard enough, it could have cracked his skull if he fell down or got nudged by the Lexus. And you didn't do that testing, so you don't know. And you also said he could have been nudged by the Lexus, and then you added in, Dr. Andrew Rentschler added in, without seeing him. Why did he have the right to make that determination on the stand? Why didn't Lally object? Like, he didn't hear that? He didn't hear it? That's the thing. It's like, Lally very well may have been able to get past reasonable doubt on more people, but he didn't do that well of a job. He let too many things fall through the cracks. He let too much stuff get in that should have been objected to. And he brought on too many witnesses that really kind of hurt the case, in my opinion. Again, I'm still saying there's reasonable doubt. I just was like, for all of these people out there that are so dead set that the science, first of all, science is never 100%. So being 100% dead set that science knows something that nobody can really know because they weren't there, I find that to be just so arrogant. It's like that mindset is super arrogant. The science said it's not possible and therefore you're stupid. Like, maybe you're kind of stupid, because science cannot be 100% guaranteed. Science is an art. Scientists are human beings. Scientists are human beings who can be biased. They can have error. They can have wrong facts. They can be lacking facts. They can be missing a whole bunch of things. They were missing a bunch of stuff. They didn't know that his hat was out there, that his shoe was out there. They didn't know about microscopic pieces of tail light in his shirt. But I don't remember ever seeing that. And somebody commented, Quentin said, well, if it was microscopic, it wouldn't have been seen. Okay, but if somebody freaking zoomed in and saw it, then why didn't they take a picture and put it up on evidence and say this was the microscope? How do you know it was there? That's it's like, what do you mean it was microscopic, so therefore it wouldn't have been seen? Right, but somebody must have seen it if they talked about it, so why didn't they show us? And again, why wasn't there any microscopic pieces of glass in his arm? So, but if he didn't hit his arm on the taillight and the Lexus nudged him, maybe when the Lexus nudged him, his shoe came off, he fell down, his head smacked on the ground, which may have been frozen. It was a blizzard, so it was below freezing. And again, nobody did the testing, so they could say, well, it was grass and snow, it must be soft. But it was a freaking blizzard. Maybe it was actually frozen, hard as concrete. But nobody knows because nobody tested it. And by the time they were getting evidence, the ground was soft again. But again, I'm not saying therefore she's guilty, she needs to go to jail. I still agree that unless they can prove this definitively, unless Lally comes out and makes this more clear, unless they say, you know what, guys, we're going to hire you and I want you to redo your testing, but I'm going to give you all this information. Or you know what, go find some other unbiased guys who have just as much credibility, just as much experience, because those two guys from ARCA are not the only two accident reconstructionists with PhDs in the whole world. So it's not as if he can't find them for the next trial. I'm a little bit more convinced, like I said in all my videos, I do believe that she hit him with her car. I don't know for sure if she knew about it. I don't think she did it like, well, I don't even know. Like, so John said, I'm not John, John's brother Paul said he thinks it was on purpose, that she backed into him, drove away and left him there to die. And he also said the way she was behaving the next day was weird, was off. She gave them bad vibes. And, Peter was like, well, you can't base it on vibes. But you know what? Vibes also tells us a lot. The reason why a lot of those, body cam footage or interviews with people who somebody went missing or somebody died mysteriously, and then it turns out that they were the one who did it, and the video was bad vibes. The video, people were like, something's weird. That's bad vibes, man. And then there's always people in the comments or, people who are defending it like, you never know how someone grieves, which is true. But it's like, yeah, but then why do we all have the bad vibes when, like, and I saw a lawyer, I don't know if it was on STS, Surviving the Survivor. He said the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. It was like the dumbest. He thinks he sounds smart, but it's actually the dumbest, wrongest thing. And he said, Most people don't understand body language. Most people can't read body language, and that is actually unequivocally false. Now, maybe most people can't explain it to you. Maybe most people can't, do analysis and dive deep and break it down and look at how she flinched and look at that shoulder shrug and look at the way she looked down and look. However, body language is literally universal. Body language is more powerful than words. You can speak a language that another person can't speak, but everybody does body language. No matter what culture you're from, no matter your age, no matter your so-called gender, no matter your so-called religion, your beliefs, your so-called socio-economical place, your class, your this, your that, whatever, your tax bracket, whether you're introvert or extrovert, none of that matters. Body language is something that everybody can read. Everybody inherently understands body language. Body language is primitive. Body language is fundamental. Body language is why a lot of times what the words they're saying, the words sound right, but it's bad vibes. It's something's off. There's some cognitive dissonance. There's some dissonance. Something isn't aligning. What you're saying is one thing, but what you're vibing your body language out is giving a whole nother story. And that's powerful. And that's something that we all have access to. So anyway, I thought that Dr. Rentschler's body language was giving vibes that he really wants the jury to see him as an extremely highly intelligent person. And the fact that there were some holes in his report, because there was a lot of holes in the data that he had to run his analysis, he didn't want to acknowledge that. And I actually found that to be a flaw in his testimony. So yes, he's handsome. Yes, he's very educated. Yes, he sounded incredibly intelligent, and he very well may be correct. But even he said the ground could have been hard enough to have been like a concrete surface, which could have been why his skull was cracked. And also the other scenario that Dr. Rentschler himself offered was the Lexus could have nudged him, making him fall, and if the ground was hard enough to have cracked his skull, then that is how he could have been hit by the vehicle and have almost no injuries, have a shoe missing, have his skull cracked, and then how did he get scratched up? Who knows? Maybe when he fell on the ground, his arm got scratched a bit. Maybe there was some rocks and ice that kind of scratched a little bit through. Now, they said there were some microscopic pieces of plastic in his shirt. So maybe he did throw the glass that he had in his hand at her, and some of it shattered, and then she backed up. And so that some of it got in his shirt, but it didn't actually scratch him, or it did, I don't know. And then he fell down and he cracked his head and he died, and she left him there. And like I said through every video, I believe that she hit him, despite the fact that according to the defense witnesses, who are PhD level doctors, accident reconstructionist experts, they themselves acknowledge that there is a possibility and we don't know. And so this video is for all of y'all who are saying that they never said there was a possibility. You're wrong. Here it is. Listen to it. And yes, however, I will just acknowledge it's still a maybe. It's not a definitive. And therefore, yes, there's doubt. And for all the people who are commenting in my video, well, if you have doubt, then that means not guilty. That's what I said. Are you deaf, dumb, and blind? I said I have doubt and therefore not guilty. What do you mean? Like somebody was like, oh my God, I can't even take you seriously. It's like, you said doubt. It's like, that's not guilty. That's what I said. I can't take you seriously because you write a comment that makes it clear that you're either willfully ignorant or you just are ignorant. And that's okay, because people are allowed to be ignorant. And you're allowed to be a juror and be ignorant. You're allowed to be a juror and not understand the testimony. You're allowed to be a juror who's like, I'm not convinced. You're allowed to be a juror who says, you know what? Yeah, those defense expert witnesses said that the chances of her getting hit by the SUV are almost nil. But they did acknowledge that it's still possible. But did Lolly prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she actually did it? No, I don't think he did. And he certainly didn't prove that she actually had motive. Yeah, she had a bad relationship. And again, going back to Paul O'Keefe. Paul O'Keefe obviously knows a heck of a lot more about the relationship and the dynamics and about Karen Reed as a human being than I ever would, or anybody who's just observing this would. And he believes she's guilty, and he is a much better judge. And yes, he's a grieving brother, but what would he gain? He gains absolutely nothing by saying that it's her. And yep, he acknowledged that he's friends with the Alberts and Higgins and the McCabe's, and he says they are good people. They were called to help, and that's exactly what they did, and now they are being lambasted. He said he's getting hate, that people call him names. Paul O'Keefe, the man who lost his sister, and then his brother-in-law, and then his brother. This man, and you, and it's like, you know, people are wackadoodles. People are Cocoa for Cuckoo Puffs. Cocoa for Cuckoo Puffs and Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and just like, eeks, yuck, you're yucky, I don't like you, you're mean, you're cruel, you're ignorant, you think you know better, and that's the part that gets me. It's like, even if you think that Karen Reed is innocent, why the hate for his family? They are the ones who know the most. And just like I said about the jury got it right, and I still agree. I agree with the jury got it right. Because there's going to be people in there who understood, like I understood, that yes, the defense, and you know what? If I had been on that jury and I was on reasonable doubt, and there was a bunch of people who were like, you know what, he said this. And if somebody had pulled up, no, they don't get to watch the videos in there. So I'm saying, like, Lolly did not pounce on that. That answer literally came out on an answer that Lolly was even trying to cut short. He wanted the guy to just simply say yes or no. And the guy, Dr. Rentschler, was trying to elaborate. And stupid Lolly was like, just yes or no. And thanks to the judge, Canoni, saying he can answer that. And that's when he said she could. Well, he said the Lexus could have nudged him. And again, him adding the without seeing him there. Why did he get to make that determination? That's literally like him coming up with a verdict on the stand. And Lolly did not only did Lolly not object to that part of it, he didn't catch the significance of the fact that there is your freaking gold. That's your diamond nugget right there. The guy just admitted, yes, the Lexus could have nudged him. He could have fallen down. And back to the part where he tried to weasel out of it, you know, if the ground had been hard enough. No, he didn't test it. But he had all these reasons why he didn't need to test it. But why did he get to determine that? Again, yes, he was the accident reconstructionist expert, but he was missing evidence during his report, and he's dismissing the fact that he never tested whether or not the ground was frozen, and it very likely could have been. This happened in January. Well, I live in the Northeast coast, so I know that it starts getting cold as a mofo in October sometimes, November. December is freezing cold. By the end of January, it's been cold for 3 months, and you got a good 2 months of cold left. So the ground could have absolutely been frozen. 100%, I have no doubt that it's possible that the ground could have been frozen. And because I rewatched that testimony where that is literally what everybody who is saying not guilty is claiming, they said there's no way humanly possible that the Lexus could have hit her, but that's not true. He freaking says it right here, and I'm going to play it and go off on the comments. I do love the comments, even the weird ones and the rude ones and the just like the off the wall ones, like and when that lady said, "You're not a serious person," I'm like, I mean, I kind of am, right? I'm like a silly nerd. I don't know. I'm like serious, unserious. I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much for watching my videos. If you do enjoy listening to me, then please hit like, hit share, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you don't miss anything. You can check out the playlists if you're interested in all of my thoughts about the Karen retrial. There's also the Wendy Adelson, and there's other stuff. So see you. And here's the clips coming. My keyboard. How cute and beautiful is it, right? Well, I actually went ahead and decided to screen record a section of my screen recording. So I just screen recorded about 11 minutes of Crash Daddy, aka Dr. Wolfe. And this is a whole bunch of stuff that he did not have in his analysis and therefore his report. So what do you think? Do you think that his report is thorough as can be? Do you think that it's appropriate to say all of these things are not important? What do you think about that? Again, this is not me saying this is what I think and this is what's right. This is me saying, hey, here's a bit of information to consider in your contemplation. And since it was a mistrial and Lally said they intend to retry it, they can retry her. They could maybe not retry her. They might modify the charges. Maybe he'll take a bit more time to do more evidence and do more testing and get different experts and streamline his case. Maybe he'll decide to let it go. But considering how much the O'Keefes believe that Karen done it, and usually, government bodies who believe as well that someone done a crime, unless you're Wendy Adelson, I guess, you can get away with murder, but allegedly. We'll see if he actually does recharge her. These are some holes in the defense's case that I'm pointing out because, again, I think she maybe really did do this. And maybe after all and all and all, I'm going to actually come to the conclusion that had been my first instinct. But again, for this particular trial, my vote would have been not guilty because I had way too much reasonable doubt. But we'll see. There's a quick shot of Paul O'Keefe and his wife and John's parents to the left. That's Karen's dad. That's Prosecutor Lally. Karen's dad and Karen's mom sitting next to him.
You are unmuted.
So, Doctor, with regard to the defendant's statements, at any point were you did you review materials, or were you made aware that the defendant said to multiple people on scene, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him"?
I'm not aware of that.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Now, within the report that you and the other doctors submitted, there's an indication that if either Mr. O'Keefe's arm or head had interacted with the taillight, there'd be some expectation that either blood or DNA would be contained on that taillight. Is that correct?
I believe, yes, that was stated in the report.
And at any point were you made aware that Mr. O'Keefe's DNA actually was recovered from that taillight assembly from the defendant's vehicle?
No, I was not.
Now, as far as forensic reports, what, if anything, were you provided in reference to that, other than the initial crime scene report?
Are you talking about specific to the scene or forensic reports to the body?
Forensic reports specific to the evidence that was recovered from the scene and from the defendant's vehicle.
Only what would be listed in the report.
Now, you indicated as one of the materials that you were provided and you reviewed was the EDR, event data recorded data.
The crash data retrieval report, yes.
Okay. Now, were you shown anything as far as a crash reconstruction report from a trooper from the state police?
No.
And the EDR data that you observed, did that contain any sort of usable data?
There was no events recovered on the black box.
And with respect to there being no events recovered on the EDR or the black box, in a pedestrian collision, is that unusual?
It is not.
And why not?
Well, because you're talking about, excuse me, a very large
weight difference between the vehicle and the pedestrian. So ultimately, what the vehicle is constantly monitoring is acceleration, which gets back to a term called delta V. So when the vehicle doesn't experience a big delta V, typically the threshold for a non-deployment event where you're not firing airbags or any safety mechanisms, but the vehicle wakes up and says, hey, there was.
So with regard to the defendant's statements, were you also not told that the defendant told several people that she had just gotten into a fight with Mr. O'Keefe right before she dropped him off at 34 Fairview Road?
So that's sustained.
Now, with regard to pedestrian collisions, you're familiar with sort of the physics term, I'm presuming, Doctor, as far as like center of mass?
Yes.
And what kind of role does the center of mass for a pedestrian play in relation to the center of mass of a vehicle as far as how the two interact? Broken and shattered plastic pieces from the taillight?
I believe it was a plastic chrome piece.
Now, when you were doing the testing as far as shooting the glass, the drinking glass at the taillight assembly, that taillight assembly was sort of held there by vice grips or something like that, is that correct? It wasn't actually physically attached to a vehicle, the one that you were shooting at?
That's correct.
The same area of where Mr. O'Keefe.
Now, as far as that, you're familiar with, there was a piece of a broken drinking glass that was recovered from the same area of where Mr. O'Keefe was found, is that correct?
Amongst the fragments of the taillight, yes.
And are you familiar with Mr. O'Keefe's DNA being present on those pieces of the exterior of a broken drinking glass located near his body?
I don't believe so.
Now, as far as Mr. O'Keefe's clothing, his fingernails, are you aware that there was DNA of Mr. O'Keefe and no one else recovered from both his fingernails and from a variety of areas of his clothing?
Objection.
Sustained.
Now, from the crime scene report that you reviewed, are you aware that there was human hair that was located on the right rear quarter panel near the dent that you were talking about?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
Yes.
Are you familiar or are you aware that subsequent mitochondrial DNA testing found that the Mitochondrial DNA profile for that hair was consistent to a probability of 99.895% with the mitochondrial DNA profile of Mr. O'Keefe.
I'm not aware of that.
Now, were you also aware that the broken drinking glass with Mr. O'Keefe's DNA on it was found to be consistent with the broken drinking glass pieces that were found in the street?
Objection.
I'll allow that.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Were you aware that the pieces from the exterior of the broken drinking glass found near Mr. O'Keefe's body with his DNA on it were then found to be consistent with pieces of broken drinking glass that were located in the street of 34 Fairview Road?
Yes.
Were you also aware that pieces of glass that you were talking about from the defendant's bumper were found to be consistent with pieces of glass recovered from the street in front of 34 Fairview Road?
Yes.
Were you aware that there were microscopic pieces of red and clear plastic, about a 16th of an inch by a 16th of an inch, that were recovered from Mr. O'Keefe's clothing that were then found to be consistent with the tailor?
No, I don't believe so.
Now, as far as, again, you weren't provided with any sort of reconstruction report from a Trooper Paul from the state police?
No, I was not.
So you're not aware that he took measurements from the ground to where certain items were on the vehicle?
Objection, Your Honor.
The objection sustained. He didn't see the report.
Your Honor, can we approach?
Sure.
This is Crash Daddy, Dr. Daniel Wolfe. So I think Lolly is making a very good point, showing that there was a lot of evidence that neither of these witnesses had when they did their analysis and the reporting. And I guess it's up to the next jury to decide, did that lack of information have a big impact on what the report decided?
My apologies. Just one moment.
Yes.
Now, Doctor, in the course of your analysis or review of materials here, were you ever provided with a video of the defendant backing out of a garage and making contact with Mr. O'Keefe's vehicle in his driveway at about 5:07 in the morning on January 29th?
No.
Now, as far as from your review and your testing and everything that you did in this case, if a collision occurred at a lower speed, say 1, 2, anywhere from 0 to 5 miles an hour, would that create the damage to the tail light that you observed in this particular case?
At that speed, no.
Tori. Then we can do our 2:00.
So there were about 10 items that you were provided that you reviewed, is that correct?
Correct.
And a number of different items that I just asked you about that you weren't provided with or you weren't aware of, correct?
Correct.
And again, in your report, in the very first paragraph, you indicate, however, ARCA reserves the right to supplement or revise this report if additional information becomes available, correct?
Correct.
I have nothing further on.
All right, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, when you were talking about the injuries to the back of the head of Mr. O'Keefe, consistent with coming in contact with a hard surface, correct?
Yes, sir.
Would that hard surface include if the ground was frozen?
Well, you'd have to perform an analysis actually, because you'd have to determine how hard that ground was. You'd have to look at the freeze and thaw cycle, probably leading up to weeks of that. You can't just look at ground and say, well, it's below freezing, so that ground must be frozen. I mean, is it a possibility? It may be, but you have to go through an actual analysis and procedure to determine how hard that ground is and whether it could have produced those injuries.
So it is something that's capable of being done by you, is that correct?
Performing that type of an analysis?
Yes.
You could go through and do it, sure, yeah.
And you didn't do it, correct?
No, I did not do it, no. So a sideswipe by its very nature involves minimal impact, minimal forces, minimal velocities.
And also contained in the report that you at least co-authored, there's an indication that Mr. O'Keefe's injuries, at least to his skull, the fracture to his skull, are consistent with him having been pushed or possibly been impacted by the subject Lexus and fallen backwards, striking his head. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, so that's another possibility.
Sorry, sir, yes or no?
No, let him answer. Let him answer the question.
So if we're saying that there's enough force if you fall backwards to strike your head and cause that skull fracture, well, he could have slipped and struck his head. The car could have backed up
and not known that he was there.
and nudged him and caused him to fall. I mean, the car could have backed up and not known that he was there.
And not known he was there, that is literally what the jury is supposed to decide. Whether she knew that he was there or not is not what that witness was intended to decide, nor could he decide, nor could he know, nor could he determine. He said the car could have backed up and hit him, nudged him, and knocked him on the ground. So for him to add the whole and not knowing that he was there and the car could have backed up, instead of saying Karen could have backed up, he's literally deciding right there and making a verdict. He is making a legal conclusion, and that is not what he was meant to do. He was meant to do an accident reconstruction. And he said it could have backed up and nudged him and made him fall on the ground that could have been frozen and cracked his damn head. And they don't know because they never tested it. So that's my thoughts about that.
Well, he could have slipped and struck his head. The car could have backed up and
not known that he was there.
Not known that he was there.
and nudged him and caused him to fall. I mean, any event that would cause him to fall backwards obviously would result in him striking his head. So there's numerous, almost infinite possibility of enough force if you fall backwards to strike your head and
Striking his head. Isn't that correct?
yeah, so that's another possibility.
Sorry, sir, yes or no?
No, let him answer. Let him answer the question.
So if we're saying that there's enough force if you fall backwards to strike your head and cause that skull fracture, well, he could have slipped and struck his head. The car could have backed up and not known that he was there and nudged him and caused him to fall. I mean, any event that would cause him to fall backwards obviously would result in him striking his head. So there's numerous, almost infinite possibility of different scenarios that could result in that type of an event.
Thanks.
Mr. Jackson? Nothing further. Okay. Dr. Rentschler, you are all set, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Jurors, I want to see counsel for the last time at sidebar right now.
So that's it for this video. What do you think? Do you think that these witnesses are a bit more biased than it may have seemed at first? Do you think that they are all aboard on the defense's side, but yet they may have been lacking bucket loads of evidence that might have given them a different opinion and a different result, a different report? Do you think that all of the things that were left out are irrelevant? Do you think that Prosecutor Lally is proving something, or do you think the defense witnesses proved their side? What do you think?
CatLoveDreamingPeach.com